Unfamiliar with the story, I don't know if you guys have heard the real story of St. Patrick's Day, but just for a second, I'm going to share it with you guys. All right, so there was this St. Patrick guy. Okay, at age 16, listen to this. I don't know if you guys have heard this, but at age 16, he was captured by Irish raiders and taken back to Ireland and was a slave. All right, he remained there for 6 years before he heard a voice say, "Behold, thy ship is ready." And he found a ship 200 miles away and fled Ireland, thinking he'd never return. Well, that didn't happen. Like his father, Patrick got involved in the church, ultimately ordained as a priest in 432 AD. At the age of 48, Patrick responded to a vision which led him to return to Ireland, the place where he was a slave, which is just like fantastic and amazing that God would turn his life so around and change him so much that he would go back to the very place that he ran away from. Though no outside religion had come into Ireland or really broke into Ireland for a thousand years, Patrick experienced incredible success through unconventional methods. All right, reports vary, but it seems Patrick planted several hundred churches and baptized thousands, possibly tens of thousands. His influence continued after his death, the end of the slave trade, and the decrease of violent crimes. To this day, Patrick is credited as evangelizing Ireland, according to Cahill, saving Western civilization. So he was this guy, and this is gonna flow right into what I'm saying this morning. And for those of you guys, speaking of the realm of change, for those of you guys who follow me on social media, I posted like an image or a picture or a logo of what I was going to be preaching over the next several weeks. Well, at about 6 o'clock, God's like, "I want you to say something else for the next 4 weeks or so." And I was like, "Really, God?" And he was like, "Really, Seth?" And I was like, "I don't want to." And he's like, "Well, I want you to." And so we went back and forth for a few minutes. I thought I was going to get my way, but I ultimately did not. I don't know if you guys have ever experienced that with God. It happens. But anyway, I'm going to be talking to you guys about an idea of unleashed, okay? I'm going to talk to you guys about the way that God moves in our lives, the way that God moves in our lives in the sense of pushing us towards greatness or pushing us towards being moved by His Spirit and empowered to do amazing things. Now, St. Patrick had run away from Ireland. He had escaped from slavery, and then God had called him to go back. God had called him to do something that he would likely not have been very interested in doing. I don't know if you guys have ever escaped a situation. Now, I'm not telling you guys to go back to an abusive situation because you feel like it's your mission and opportunity. Understand your limits. Understand who you are. Understand how dangerous that can be. But there are times in our lives where we evacuate an area. We run away and we're like, "Oh, I don't know if I can do this." And God says, "Go and be with those people. Encourage them. Do something that you otherwise would not have done." And here's the truth. In speaking of this topic, unleashed, most Christians never reach the level of power and capacity. We want to live unleashed, but we don't get there. Here's a powerful truth, okay? We've lost the wonder, the power, and the presence of a God that is just more. We have lost the wonder, we have lost the power, and the presence of a God that is just more. We get bored. We get complacent. Church becomes common. Our religious experience becomes common. It becomes familiar. We know things. We've read things. Pastors preached about things. The songs become familiar. The words of the Bible become familiar. And before we know it, we get bored. We get complacent. We begin to lose our wonder. begin to lose our wonder. Now, this has been said in many different variations. Some people accredit it to C.S. Lewis. It's not really exactly C.S. Lewis's, quote. It's some people have taken it from his books. Anyway, I know that you guys have heard this before, but often change only happens when our pain of remaining where we are is greater than the pain of making the change. Sometimes we're like, I don't want to change. I don't want to change. I'm just comfortable. I'm uncomfortable, but I'm comfortable. I'm uncomfortable, but it's easy just to stay here. It doesn't make sense. And I've been there before. Like, this is so aggravating. Life is so difficult. Life is so challenging. I don't want to do this. I don't want to go anywhere. And we're so aggravated and uncomfortable that we just like, we're like, okay. And then we stay there. We stay there. We stay there. We stay there. And then sometimes things get so overwhelming, things get so broken, things get so difficult that we're like, okay, I'm done. I'm finished. I can't do this anymore. I've got to change. I can't do this anymore. I got to venture out there and I've got to do new things. I can't do this anymore. I'm so tired. I'm so exhausted. I'm so frustrated. It's just too painful to remain in this situation, to remain in this place. And so we begin to make those eventual decisions in making change. You see, change is an inevitable process. Change is something that we can't avoid. Change is something that we can't run away from. I don't like it. All right? There's this song floating around on the internet. My kids are determined to learn it by memory, to sing it back to me at the end of August. Now, I know some of you guys are like, okay, Pastor, you're not that old, but there's this song, I can't even remember. What's the name of the actual song? It's too late because you're 40. Like the song goes, you can't do those things with your body. You're looking at me really strange like, but you know that when you reach 40 and then 44 and then 45 and you're like, I used to bend and I used to be able to do things that I could do and I can't do them anymore, right? I've been working as an assistant coach with Coach K or Kleinstrata at during the Coloneltown wrestling, and my son has been practicing wrestling, and one of the things that have made me all too familiar of what I can't do anymore is trying to stretch like they stretch. Like, my son can sit on the floor and just bend himself in half. Like, seriously, I don't know if you've seen it, but it happens. And like, he can do this bridge where, like, like when you're practicing wrestling, you do this bridge and you just use your head because you're trying to, strengthen your neck. This kid can go backwards bridge and then touch his nose on the floor. Like, I'm like, dude, you're going to break your neck. And he's like, it's fine. It's easy. This is okay, Change is inevitable, right? Things begin to change in your physical form. Things begin to change and adjust in shape. And no, I'm not going to say that. Things begin to fall down that didn't fall down, okay? Things begin to be affected in different ways. Change is inevitable. Change is inevitable. It's a process in life. And here's the truth, okay? I know you have met, but I have met some people that are old in their age that are really, really immature. All right? Okay. Case in point. Anyway. But no, like, seriously, you think that the older you get, the more wise you get. The process of change and development in your life should make you more mature, should make you more wise, should make you begin to understand things better, should make you have a better perspective of what the Scripture says. Change happens whether we are ready for it or not. There's a development that takes place in our life, and sometimes we've seen people like reach this pinnacle age and like, ooh, I'm understanding more, I'm getting more, I'm discovering more, and we think, okay, we've arrived there, we've landed, and I know so much more than I thought I would know, and then all of a sudden, what we thought was the beginning stages of some great wisdom and development, we begin to decline, because why? Change always happens. There's no neutral, okay? You're either advancing with little baby steps or big steps, or you are falling backwards. The scary thing is the change that is the drift in the opposite direction of where you want to go is so slow and subtle. You don't even realize that it's happening. You don't even realize that it's taking place. You don't realize what's going on in your life. You don't see it always. You don't notice it always. It's terrifying to me. I don't like how things change. I don't like how things have become increasingly more difficult in the current culture that we exist in to reach people for Christ. We are living in an area where the ground naturally is frozen. We are also living in an area where the ground in spiritual life is become frozen, and it's so hard to till it up. It's so hard to break it up. It's so hard to push people into a right relationship with the Lord. And so change happens. Now, I'm going to read to you guys some scripture here, and this is Ephesians 4:20 through 24. And it says this: but that isn't what you learned about Christ, talking about some things that are beginning to shift in people's lives. It's stepping away from living immorally as the world would expect. In verse 21, it says, since you have heard about Jesus and have learned the truth that comes from him, throw off your old self or sinful nature and your former way of life, which is corrupted by lust and deception. Instead, let the Spirit renew your thoughts and attitudes. Put on your new nature, created to be like God, truly righteous and holy. Now, I don't know if you guys have ever studied the International Children's Bible, but I love sometimes the way it phrases things. Don't get offended, okay? This helps me as well. Sometimes when I'm studying scripture, I'm like, I don't get it, I don't understand. Let me go to the kids' Bible, okay? But follow along with me for just a minute, because this really kind of expands this truth for us this morning. It says this: but the things you learned in Christ were not like this. I know that you heard about him and you were in him, so you were taught. So you were taught the truth. Yes, the truth is in Jesus. You were taught to leave your old self, to stop living the evil you lived before. The old self becomes worse and worse because people are fooled by the evil things they want to do. But you were taught to be made new in your hearts. You were taught to become a new person. A new person is made to be like God, made to be truly good and holy. There is a transformation that begins to take place in our lives when we become dedicated to God, when we respond to the beautiful truth of the gospel. The story that Jesus came to this earth, a perfect man, died on the cross, and then resurrected for our freedom. There's something that begins to change on the inside, something that begins to change the way you see things. And if we are going to live a life that is unleashed, we have got to realize that it may be a revolutionary change where we leave the old life behind and start a new life. That life is always transforming. That life is always discovering new things. That life is always being open to new discoveries that change the way we view the world, change the way we view our lives, change the way we see things. Now, I'm going to make some simple points to you guys this morning, but I want you to grab these, okay? I want you to grab these. Number one, God never changes. Everything else does, or maybe everything us does. God never changes, but everything else does. We're living in a culture that's fluid. We're living in a time that's always changing. Things are always happening differently. Things are always moving along. Things are always becoming different. The world around us and its trends are crazy. I mean, come on. I used to have this massive, I think the first laptop I was given was my first year in ministry school, and this thing was huge. I mean, huge. And I remember the first time I dropped it on my toe. I mean, seriously, this thing was heavy. And It hurts really bad. But now you can get technology that like fits in the palm of your hand. The very things that that computer was capable of doing, I can now do on a cell phone or a tablet device. Things are always changing. Culture is always shifting. Things that were popular at one point are unpopular at the next. Case in point, my children often say when watching or seeing things that present the styles of the old days, come on, you know, like the 80s are that old. Anyway, I know, I hear you laughing at me. They say, you guys really wore that stuff? You guys really did your hair like that? And to my immediate response is, I usually say to them, when your children look at the clothes you're wearing, they're going to wonder why you are wearing skin-tight pants with all kinds of weird and strange designs on them. They call them La La Roo or whatever. I call them La La Lucy, Lularoe, La La Roo. Okay, you know what? I don't care. I really don't. I just think it's weird.
They may make men's sizes.
Oh, nope. Nope. Not going to happen. Ever. Anyway. Anywhere from music to pop culture to whatever it is, television, movies, the way we dress, the way we exist in life, everything is always changing. God never changes. God is always the same, but here's what happens is everything else or everything us changes when we come in contact with God. In the same verse I was just reading, I'm going to extract some thoughts in the ESV version, okay? I want you guys to catch this, okay? Put off your old self. You've got to put off your old self. You've got to stop living in the evil ways that you lived before. You've got to put off. You've got to push away. You've got to throw off the old sinful nature and your former way of life. Why? Because if you don't change that, if everything doesn't change, if everything me doesn't change, the way that I used to walk, the things that I used to do, the things that I used to follow, my life will be a constant disaster. It just will be. It just will be. When you come in contact with the truth of Jesus Christ, everything changes. He doesn't change. He is firm. He is footed. There's nothing that's going to shift who he is. There's nothing that's going to change his personality, his emotions, his focus, his love for you. There's nothing that's going to change that. But when you come in contact with an unchangeable God, it should create a changeable life. It should create something that happens in us. You see, life is a series of mundane occurrences punctuated by crisis or tragedy or by exciting changes that moves you toward a new place. Now, usually when we hear the word new, we think of like good things and vibrant things, but the new place could also be terrible things. See, change is inevitable. Change is inevitable. We're either going to arrive at breakdowns or breakthroughs, and sometimes they can take form in the same place. What we've always done will never accomplish what we need done. What we've always done, it says will doesn't, sorry, doesn't necessarily accomplish what we need done. We need to be renewed in our spirit and in your minds. Be renewed in your spirit and of your minds. The spirit of your minds. Be renewed, be renewed, be renewed. Sometimes what we've always done isn't going to get us where we need to be. We get comfortable. We get set in place. We get set in these rhythms and we keep, going over these same rhythms, doing these same things over and over and over and over and over again, expecting new results. Some people call that insanity. I don't know if that's the actual definition of insanity, but the truth is it fits, right? I want to get to this place. I want to change my life. I want to arrive at a new destination. I want God to do something big in my life and life altering. So what am I going to do? I'm going to just do the same thing I've always been doing. Yes, there is some good things and getting in certain rhythms like reading the Bible and going to church and praying regularly. Those are important rhythms in our life that should be the power of the same, so to speak. But there are things that happen in our life that we need to interrupt, that we need to step out of, patterns that we get stuck in that aren't working. If you want to unleash the power of God, you have got to realize that there are some things that you have just got to stop doing, because what you've been doing is not doing it. What you've been doing is not accomplishing what you want. I hate the phrase, sometimes it works, but I hate the phrase, why reinvent the wheel? Innovation is a beautiful thing, right? Innovation is something that is significant. It's powerful. Innovation is something that puts us at the front and causes us to accomplish great things. Innovation in our personal life is going to result in victories. Innovation in the church is going to result in lives being saved and lives being changed by the gospel. Innovation changes things around us. We have got to begin to establish a mindset that things are going to change. Things are going to shift. And there are moments in our life that we have got to stop what we've always been doing. We've got to stop. I've got to be renewed in the spirit of your minds. Renewed. It's like speaking of a shift. It's speaking of a change. We've got to be made new in your heart. It speaks of something that begins to see the way we think. It's beginning to change our attitudes. It's beginning to change our outlook. It's beginning to change things. Have you ever done something the same way over and over and over again and then changed it and you're like, whoa, I didn't realize. I didn't know that was going to happen. Like my wife with the remote. Oh, shoot, she's in here. Oh, snap. No. I know she's in there. I'm just poking fun at her a little bit. Yep. See? Some things... Never mind. What are some of the patterns that you've established in your life that need to change? What are some of the patterns in your life that you need to look at? Are they being ineffective? Have you plateaued? Are you bored? We've got to begin to change things if we're going to see change happen. I know that sounds simple, but seriously, stop doing it the same old way. New people require new expectations. New people require new expectations. It says, in the verses that we were reading in the ESV, it says this. It says, put on the new self. Put on the new self. You're a different person. You see things differently. Life is different. Life as you've experienced it or now experiencing it is different. Put on a new self. You're new. You're a new creation. The old things are gone. The things that you were are gone. The things that held you back are gone. The things that held you down are gone. The things that devastated your life are gone. The things that you could have been walking with. I've said this statement before, but I thank God every single day that the phrase that a lot of our culture uses is, you made your bed, lie in it. Jesus does not operate that way. He doesn't look at you and say, oh, you made your bed, lie in it. No. He said, you made your bed, I'll lie in it so you don't have to. And I'm going to free you from those things that you were. I'm going to free you from those bad decisions. You see, new people require new expectations. You're going to put on this new nature. You were taught to become a new person. I want my expectations to increase. Come on. We serve a Jesus who walked around and raised the dead to life, who walked around and saw blind and helped them see again, who touched a leper who was, that was like a big no-no in his culture. He touched the life of a leper and they were healed. He spent time with a woman who was considered outside of the race or outside of the Jews, a Samaritan woman who was in intent and purposes considered to be loose. I don't know how else to explain it in our current understanding. She was loose. She had a lot of people, a lot of men that she had been with. I mean, this is a God that moved through his son Jesus to do these amazing things. If we're to put on a new nature and a new self, it should change the lens in which we look at life. It should change the way we see the world. It should change the way we see our existence. It should change the way we see things. If you're going to be unleashed, if God's going to work in marvelous ways in your life, if you're going to be empowered, if Jesus is going to do what he does through the Holy Spirit in your life, you must begin to expect different things, new things. We get stuck in our ruts, and sometimes we sit back and wallow and say, well, this is the way God wanted it to be, so this is the way it's just going to be. Yes, I understand that there are certain things about our life that are the way they are, and we've got to grow in our trust in God. We've got to learn to know that in those moments where we are just like, I expected something different out of my life. I expected things to be different. You know what? In that place where you're kind of stuck, you need to create new expectations within your thought of limitations. You think you're limited by where you are. You think you're limited by the way life has put you or where you've been carried. You know what? In that place of your perceived limitation, begin to develop new expectation. Because what you think is a place where you're stuck, where you're just like, oh, I didn't want it this way. God's like, watch what I'm doing here. Your limits, or what you perceive as your limits, God can do marvelous things. New people require new expectations. When is the last time you lifted your level of expectation from God? When is the last time you said, you know what? I'm going to believe again. I'm going to believe again. Change is unavoidable. There's new stages in life that require new expectations. I wrote this or typed this out. We've got to stop whining and start working. We've got to stop whining and start working. If you want to have new expectations, that doesn't mean you just sit back on a couch and you're like, okay, God, do what you're going to do. I'm frustrated. I'm just going to sit back and relax and say, okay, Jesus, take the wheel. You got this. Do something about it. No. We've got to stop whining and start working. If you want God to do something new, if you want your expectations to be exceeded, you've got to step out in faith and say, okay, I'm going to do something crazy. Don't go too crazy, okay? My son's been glued several times. It's not what I'm talking about. All right, I'm not talking about stitches and broken bones crazy, okay? This is not an excuse for that. But I am saying that there are some times where we got to say, okay, I am not going to whine. I'm not going to moan. I'm not going to complain anymore. Things are not fair. No, we've got to stop whining and start working. Why? Because we are never going to discover the expectations that we can live within if we just sit back and say, okay, God, just do it. Just do it, God. Just do it. No. If I want to believe for big things, I've got to step out and say, okay, God, you got to step up in your hope. There's something more to be hopeful for. This is an important one. The message remains, the method changes. Oh, the method changes. The message remains. The methods may change, but the message doesn't. In Ephesians 4:24, it says, created after the likeness of God in true righteousness and holiness. God is working something new in us. God is changing us. God is doing a beautiful work. In the International Children's Bible, it says it this way, made to be truly good and holy. The message doesn't change. Who God is doesn't change. Who Jesus Christ is doesn't change. The gospel itself, what he came to do for us, doesn't change. Methods may change. Your outlook on life may change. The world around you may change, but that doesn't mean that he changes. The truth, the beautiful, amazing, powerful, significant truth of who Jesus is doesn't change. Maybe the way through which it's delivered changes. Maybe the way it is spoken changes. Maybe the way that new life is created. The avenue through which. This is uncomfortable territory. We say that Jesus ate dinner with the outcasts of the world, but we get uncomfortable when someone that we consider spiritual, understand what I'm saying this, okay? I'm not saying go and drink, but we get uncomfortable when somebody who is spiritual goes and sits at a bar to talk to people. That's not, if that's your vice, don't do that, okay? That's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying. But we get uncomfortable when we think that I've got to step into this new place, I've got to step into this new thing, and it's kind of like a shift of methods. I just don't know. I've got to reach people for Jesus. I've got to share the gospel. I've got to share the truth, but it's going to require me to walk into a place where, like a long, long time, things weren't looking good. People didn't see that the same way. When I was ministering in an inner city church, there was a lot of conversation about, what the pastor should wear. And he should put on his best. He should wear whatever he's got that looks great. It was a requirement that every Sunday I was to be in a suit. And I was afraid that in me being in a suit, I alienated people who could not afford clothes like that. The people that their best may have been some, torn jeans and a broken down t-shirt. Methods change. All right? Methods change. The man, Jesus Christ himself, doesn't. We've got to stop arguing and debating about certain things. You've got to allow yourself to be affected through different conduits that you never thought you would be affected through. Yes, he is an unchanging miracle maker who does amazing things, but don't get so stuck in your position that you're refusing to see how he can move outside your box that you've created for him. There are so many times that he said, hey Seth, I'm going to break out of this box. I'm going to give you a different way of looking at life. I'm going to give you a different thing. I'm going to do something amazing. And I'm like, well, God, that's not how it was. Okay, fine. All right, I'm going to step out and believe that it may be a different way of approach. And even though it may be a different way of approach, and the methods may have changed, the message, Jesus Christ himself did not change in changing the method through which he is affecting my life. You see, change is inevitable. It is unavoidable. It is unavoidable. We can grow in wisdom or ignorance, just being real. We can grow in our understanding of Jesus, or we can develop a more calloused refusal of understanding of Jesus. Things are going to change. Your actions and your life and your lifestyle determine how those things change. How those things change. And so, in asking this, I've got to ask this one simple question. What's next for you? What's next for you? What are you going to do with this? How are you going to respond to this truth? If we want to be unleashed, if we want God dreams to unfold in our life, if we want God to do what God can do, what only God can do, if we want God to change the position of our heart and how broken and ravaged and devastated it is, we've got to bend ourselves more closely and intimately towards the Creator. Yes, I understand that there are certain things that may need to help you. All right? I understand that. But don't assume that you can't be free. Don't assume that your heart can't be healed. Don't assume that your physical body can't be healed. I was sitting downstairs with a bunch of rambunctious boys that Ron brought over to my house for a little bit yesterday, and Ron was sharing a story about God had miraculously healed his body. That God had miraculously healed his body through prayer and prayer and prayer and prayer. We get away from this. We get away from this. But we've got to believe that we can live life unleashed. Change is unavoidable. Change is unavoidable. What's next for you? Where are you going to position yourself? What are you going to do in your life where that change is just going to leave you speechless? When's it going to happen? It may start this morning with what feels like the most insignificant step. But take the step. Take the step. Take the step. I so desperately want it for you, but I can't make it happen. I so desperately want it for you, but I can't push you into it as much as I would love to. I can't make it happen for you, but God can. God can. Father, I thank you so much for this truth. I thank you for speaking to us through your word. I thank you, God, for changing the way we see things. God, this morning, this may have been some familiar words. God, this text may have been familiar, but I pray that you would enliven in us new perspectives. God, that we would notice that change is inevitable, but we would leverage our love for you, that we would leverage our confidence in you, that we would pursue with greater vigor your word and prayer and you, and we would watch as you unleash in our life. You are a great God, and you can do whatever you please. And whatever pleases you is that whatever is your love for us and the freedom that you offer us. God, may this be the beginning stages. May this be the start. May we begin to position ourselves for a life that's unleashed, for a life fluent and expressive in your kind of dreams. Amen. Amen.